Kamartaj, Kathmandu, Nepal, August 12, 2012. The Ancient One had followed through on her promise to have the servants collect broken items for me so that I could continue to practice my repair spell on more varied targets, having apparently instructed them leave the items inside of a large wooden box that I had found waiting at the foot of my bed after returning from breakfast the following morning. They also included a note with every delivery listing which items the servants would be returning to their original owners after I was done repairing them, allowing me to choose if I wanted to keep any of the rest. Having found a rather familiar alarm clock sitting inside the box after returning from breakfast the next 2 mornings, broken in a different way each time, I wasn't quite sure if Master Wong appreciated my efforts. He must have finally gotten the Ancient One's message though, since he had been sitting off in the corner of the dining hall the next morning drinking what smelled like a very strong cup of masala tea. Checking the contents of the box once I got back from breakfast, I couldn't help but notice that Master Wong's alarm clock had not been waiting for me this morning, confirming my earlier suspicions. Removing the piece of paper that was tucked in with the latest collection of broken items, I unfolded the note that the servants had left for me as I walked over to take a seat at my desk. Looking over the list, I realized that the number of items needing to be returned to their owners had drastically been reduced over the last couple of days, giving me a wider selection to pick from if I wanted to keep any of the items for myself. Not that I had much storage space left in my small brick-walled room, having kept all of the clothing and equipment that I had brought with me after leaving my family behind in Canada. Reflexively checking the back of the paper to make sure I hadn't missed anything, I thought about taking a quick look at some of the more interesting items that had been listed, before deciding to check my email first. To Laura Kinney. From Sarah Kinney. Subject, Pics. Hi, Laura. I just love the pictures that you sent me. I printed them both out, and Natasha was able to get a couple of frames for me so that I could put them up on the mantle with rest of the pictures I have of our family. I'm so glad that you were able to get the camera fixed on your phone, as it was nice being able to finally see your face again after all of these months. Being where you are has obviously done you a lot of good. You're definitely looking a lot better than you were when I last saw you, though if I ever got as much sun as you must be getting I would burn to a crisp. It's nice to hear that your teachers are giving you a good challenge, though I'm impressed with how fast you're moving up through the grade levels. The fact that you managed to repair the camera on your phone yourself after only a few weeks of study is nothing short of astounding. Natasha suggested homeschooling your sisters after learning how good you are doing, and our friend with the bow was able to bring over some school books for us during his last visit. I can only hope that your sisters are half as studious as you are. I made sure to give all of your sisters a big hug for you, and I think you just about made their entire week. I can't wait until you can at least come over for a visit, as they're all dying to meet you in person. But, I do agree that would probably be a bit too dangerous right now, for all of us. Love ya. Mom. To Sarah Kinney. From Laura Kinney. Subject, Pics. Hi Mom. I've been missing you all a lot too, and I would love to come over for a visit. I'll have to arrange something with Natasha as soon as it's safe to travel. I'll keep an eye out on the news. It will be nice to be able to finally meet my sisters now that they're awake, and to see how everyone is doing now that we've all had some time away from the facility. Maybe we can take another group picture with the entire family while I'm there. As far as my teachers giving me a good challenge, I've actually had to slow down a bit so that they can get caught up on grading all of the homework I've been turning in. If my sisters are anything like me, then you're going to have your hands full, though I wish you luck with getting Gabby and Zelda to sit still long enough, based on stories Belle has been telling me about those two. Love ya. Laura. To Laura Kinney. From Belladonna Kinney. Subject, Hi sis. Hi sis. Mom gave us all a hug today, and told us all that it was from you. I don't know what you said to Mom since the last time we wrote to each other, but she does seem to be feeling a lot better now than she did a few weeks ago, though I have seen Natasha giving her an odd look sometimes and smelling kind of confused, I think. Those pictures you sent Mom are really awesome by the way, though as the palest member of this family I do have to say that I am very jealous of your tan. I'm also glad that our healing factor keeps me from getting a sunburn, as Mom spent some time outside with us over the last few weeks and her skin turned really red and painful. None of us knew what to do to help her, since dealing with stuff like that was never covered in our training, but Natasha was able to get some kind of cream stuff to help Mom out. Paris is really jealous of the muscles you were showing of in that second picture, since she still hasn't built up the strength needed to use a better bow than the one she already has. Speaking of our friend with a bow, he brought over a whole bunch of workbooks and stuff for us the last time he came over for a visit so that mom can start homeschooling us. The rest of our sisters don't seem very interested, which isn't a surprise, but I'm really excited to start learning this stuff, since I'll need to learn the basics if I'm ever going to get smart enough to be able to figure out things like those chemical sensors Natasha got for us. Gabby really liked the cool pose you made in the second picture, the one that made Paris all jealous, and kept on bugging mom to take a cool picture of her to send back to you. Mom had to remind her several times that we really can't be sending a lot of pictures back and forth, since that might help the bad guys find us. Mom did take a few more pictures to put up on the mantelpiece though, which you'll get to see when you're finally able to come over for a visit. You might also see a lot of ravens as well, since they seem to have quickly figured out that Gabby and Zelda were the ones leaving all of those treats around for them. Mom seems to have resigned herself to the fact that there will be at least some kind of wild animal around the house on account of those two, though she has drawn a very firm line on keeping them outside. I think that Paris might be getting in on it too, because I caught her looking up information on how to teach ravens to talk after I read your last email to them. I'd better wrap this up. I think I hear Gabby and Zelda planning how to get the cookie jar from the top of the fridge without leaving any evidence behind. I'd better get in on the planning or else they might mess it up. Love ya. Belle. To Belladonna Kinney. From Laura Kinney. Subject: Hi sis. Hi Belle. I'm glad to hear that mom has been spending more time with you guys, though I am sorry to hear about her sunburn. That's probably why she mentioned that she would burn if she got as much sun as I have been, though she didn't tell me that it had already happened. I'm glad you can't get sunburn, because your pale skin looks very pretty in the picture mom sent me, kind of like porcelain, only 100 times more awesome because you're my sister. Please remind Paris that all of you have literally the same genes as I do, and that when she reaches this age she will probably have muscles bigger than mine if she keeps on practicing with her bow. Let Gabby know that I look forward to seeing all of the awesome pictures when I have a chance to visit. I don't know how much you keep up with the news, or if Natasha has mentioned the bombings going on right now, but it's not exactly safe to travel right now. It's not like I can just buy a ticket and waltz through the airport with these things in my arms and feet. I'd set off every metal detector in the place, and with security increased I can't really risk using the methods I used to get to here in the first place. I do promise to try to come over for a visit as soon as it is safe to travel, though from the sounds of it I'm beginning to wonder if I'm going to find you all living in a rookery if our sisters get their way with the ravens. In the meantime, tell everyone I wish them good luck with your schoolwork, and to keep at it even if it can be really boring. You don't know when you might be interested in learning something later on that would require you to know the stuff mom is teaching you right now. Love ya. Laura. P.S. Are you sure it's a good idea to help Gabby and Zelda get access to more sugar? I took a moment after replying to Belle's email to send up a silent prayer up to a theme for my mother's continued sanity in the face of 4 hyped-up sugar-fueled mutant daughters. I could only imagine how difficult it would be to get them to actually sit down long enough for them to learn anything when she started to homeschool them. It was nice to know that all of my sisters were starting to become their own people, finding their own hobbies and interests, even though we all started off with the same set of memories. They were becoming so much more than the clone soldiers that Weapon X had meant for them to be, and I was glad that my presence here had prevented all of us from suffering the fate that I had read about in my previous life. Though now I had to wonder if Doreen Green ever got the powers of Squirrel Girl in this universe, considering the crazy sort of adventures that Gabby and Zelda might get into if they ever joined forces with her. I could easily imagine my 2 youngest sisters bugging our mother to find out what sequence of genes allowed Doreen to talk with and understand squirrels, so that she could work out a way to give them the same ability. I chuckled to myself at the sheer absurdity of the idea, only to suddenly stop as I had a sobering thought that caused me to go back to Belle's email to reread the part about Natasha looking at our mother while smelling confused. Nothing that I had read in my mother's email even hinted at a reason for Natasha react the way that Belle had mentioned, though it is possible that mom did follow through on that hug I asked her to give Natasha. Perhaps there might be some clue as to what was going on with Natasha hidden within the subtle interrogation she had no doubt written in response to the pictures that I had sent off to my mother. To Laura Kinney. From Natasha Romanoff. Subject: Are you safe? Hello, Laura. I wish you could have seen how happy your mother was to be able to see your face again, even if it was only on her computer screen. She dropped everything she was doing when she got your pictures so that she could print them off and show them to your sisters. Gabrielle managed to convince your mother to take a few more pictures of everyone so that the 2 you sent wouldn't be lonely. At least, That's the excuse she finally settled on so that she could make a few awesome poses of her own. I'm glad to see that you're keeping yourself in good shape, though I do have to wonder how you've managed to get that much sun with all of the studying you've been doing. Do they not have an indoor gym? I'm sure you don't have to worry about getting skin cancer, but it is a valid concern for the rest of us. You've no doubt heard that I've had my friend bring over some school supplies so that your mother can start homeschooling your sisters. Your oldest sister, Belladonna, seems very interested in getting started so that she can learn more about how the chemical sensors work. The rest of your sisters seem less enthused. You mentioned in your last email that you were going to be paying more attention to the news, so you have probably already found out about the bombing that happened on the 9th. In regards to him deserving our attention, he was unfortunately correct when he told the nation that we know who he is, but we don't know where he is. We're working on that second part. I hope you are still staying safe there, and I'll stop bugging you about coming for a visit until after the current situation with the Mandarin has been resolved. Keeping your family safe has actually been one of the more relaxing long-term assignments I've had in a very long time, but I'll hold you to your promise to repay me once you're done with your training. Natasha. 2. Natasha Romanoff. From Laura Kinney. Subject, Re, are you safe? Hi Natasha. Don't let the pictures fool you, I'm bigger in real life, okay, maybe not much bigger, but I'm still hoping to gain a few more inches before I'm done growing. Belle told me about Gabby being jealous of my awesome pictures, though I'm kind of embarrassed about the strong arm pose I made in that second picture. Trust me though, it was better than some of the other pictures I took, which shall never be seen again on account of me immediately deleting them out of shame. I'm looking forward to seeing what Gabby decided was awesome enough for the mantle place when I'm finally able to come over for a visit, though I'll probably end up needing your help with my own awesome poses, so that I can give Gabby some decent competition. I usually exercise outside in the morning to help wake myself up, and burn off some of my excess energy so that I can sit still long enough to study. Maybe the same thing will work for my sisters, though I do suggest keeping an eye on their sugar intake, regardless of our fast metabolisms. I'm glad to hear that Belle is showing so much interest in furthering her education already, but I hope that you won't be pressing the rest of my sisters too hard, since they finally have an opportunity to enjoy their childhood in a way that was never available to you and I. I did get caught up on recent events shortly after replying to your previous email, but the last bombing that had been mentioned at the time was back on the 8th of July. I've been so busy with my training that I haven't even thought to check the news again since then, but I'll make sure to get caught back up again after sending this email. Laura. The fact that I wasn't able to find anything in Natasha's email to explain the suspicious behavior that Belle had reported to me wasn't very surprising. I did however find it interesting that she specifically mentioned my mother seeing my face on her computer screen, indicating that she might have been in the room with her when she opened my email. While I might be reading too much into the situation, I couldn't help but wonder if Natasha was spending more time with my mother than she had been before. She also spent more time talking about the rest of my family than she had in any of her previous emails, and had actually mentioned Gabby and Belle by name, instead of just talking about my sisters in general. Reminding myself that Natasha was a highly skilled spy, and that I shouldn't make too many assumptions based upon her no doubt carefully worded emails, I then took a moment to consider the clues that Natasha had already managed to gather from the pictures that I had sent to my family. She obviously knew that I had been getting a lot of exercise, and that I had spent enough time out in the sun to get a tan in spite of my healing factor. It would have also been obvious that I hadn't been wearing a tank top during that time, on account of the tan lines left by the sleeveless robes I wore while exercising. The fact that she asked about the lack of indoor gym also hinted at the fact that she had figured out that the place I was training at was not a traditional university. But that should have been obvious from the beginning, due to my self-appointed mission of learning how to remove the trigger scent from the minds of myself and my sisters. Though, based upon the fact that she said that she would be holding me to my promise to repay her once I was done with my training, I had a feeling that Natasha might want me to take a look at Clint once I had proven my ability to remove the trigger scent programming from my sisters. Assuming that she would ever be willing to trust me enough to let me into her best friend's head in the first place. Looking back over the comment she made, not knowing the location of the Mandarin made me realize that I could blow Killian's entire conspiracy wide open with a single properly worded email. Unfortunately, I had no way of knowing where all of his extremist soldiers would be until the final battle on the Norco, or what kind of contingency plans he could have already put in place with the support of someone as high up as the vice president himself. Knowing that I wasn't likely to find a solution to that particular problem anytime soon, I let out a frustrated sigh as I closed the mail app on my phone and opened up the news, deciding to follow through on my promise to Natasha to get caught back up on current events. It didn't take me long to find several articles on the latest Mandarin bombing, though none of them really had anything new to report other than the time and location of this latest disaster. Scrolling through the rest of the articles listed under the heading of Top Stories, I soon came across an image of Iron Man fighting a man wearing a pair of rocket boots with what looked like a bucket on his head. The sheer absurdity of the image made me open the article, and I was soon reading about the odd series of events that lead to Iron Man and War Machine fighting against a man who called himself the Melter in the middle of a junkyard. Apparently the man, one Bruno Horgan, had been working on making his own knockoff of the Iron Man armor, only to have the power supply cause his armor to literally melt off of his body while he was making his presentation to the military, which led to Justin Hammer getting the contract instead. Following the pattern of all jilted comic book scientists, he then decided to rebuild his armor so that he could use it to defeat Iron Man, with intention of then selling his Melter armor off to the highest bidder. While the technology he used was impressive, at the end of the day it wasn't good enough to face off against the combined efforts of both Iron Man and War Machine, leading to his eventual defeat and arrest. However, the fact that people like him could build something using this world's equivalent of a box of scraps that would allow him to fight on that level reminded me of one of the reasons that I had chosen to be reincarnated here in the first place. While I could already see how the skills and techniques I was learning during my time here in Kamartaj would be immensely useful when it came to figuring out the science and technology available to me in this universe, there just wasn't enough space here in my little brick-walled room to keep more than a few personal belongings. I still had no idea how long it would take for me to finally learn how to cleanse the mind from foreign influence, but I could already tell that I would need a secure place to start storing things long before my training here in Kamartaj was complete. Locking my phone and setting it down on my desk, I leaned back in my chair and began to go over several potential locations for my future base inside my head, quickly discarding several due to either their current residence, their risk of discovery, or the sheer amount of effort it would take to prepare them for use in the first place. Without access to the resources available to people like Tony Stark, I couldn't just have a new base built for me, which meant that I had to find something abandoned that was far enough of the beaten path to prevent someone from just stumbling across it. Deciding to attack this problem from another angle, I started to go back over all of the different locations that I had read about during my studies here in Kamartaj, on the off chance that one of them might fit my needs. While most of the places that had been written about were dark temples full of ancient evils, or the tombs of powerful sorcerers containing cursed relics, there was one journal that I had read while learning about how to deal with restless spirits that might have the answer. Nearly 70 years ago the Ancient One herself had led a group of her fellow sorcerers to a mountain retreat to deal with the restless spirits of a large number of men who had died very unnatural deaths. Most of the spirits were incoherent and violent, having died suddenly in the middle of battle, but the few that could still be understood spoke of having their bodies disappear in a flash of blue light. There was only one battle that I knew of that matched that description, and I couldn't recall the place ever being mentioned in any of the other movies. While its existence would be part of public record at this point, its remote location would make it ideal for my own purposes, assuming that nobody else had moved in during the intervening years. Realizing the only way for me to know for sure was to go and take a look for myself, I started to make a mental list of everything that I would need to take with me on my trip. I also did a quick Google search on my phone, discovering that it would actually be much colder in the Swiss Alps than it was here in Kathmandu Valley, in spite of the fact that it was around 1,000 feet lower in elevation. Standing up from my desk, I made my way over to the dresser so that I could pull out the set of thickly woven winter robes that I had shoved into the back of the drawer as soon as they had given them to me back in June, finding little reason to wear them during the middle of monsoon season. Laying the robes out on the foot of my bed so that I could give them a closer look, it didn't take me long to decide that they should be perfect for the near freezing temperatures I would soon be facing. The thin canvas shoes that they handed out to all of the students here on the other hand would be less than useless the moment they got even slightly damp, which made me glad that I had kept the pair of knee-high leather boots that I had bought for myself in that second-hand store back in Quebec City. While a little bit of moisture might seep in through the zippers on the side, the thick leather would keep my feet and calves relatively dry, and the deeper tread on the soles would provide a better grip. Pulling said boots out from underneath the bed, I dusted them off with the end of one of my robe sleeves, before setting them back down on the floor when I noticed that not only were a few of the zipper teeth were out of alignment, but one of the boot laces had begun to fray. Casting the repair spell, I soon had the zippers looking good as new, though still a little worn from use as some of the nickel plating had been rubbed away to reveal the brass underneath. Deciding to give my leather bomber jacket the same level of attention, I pulled it out from the back of the dresser drawer, where it had been tucked next to my set of winter robes. While I had already cleaned off most of the assorted dirt and much that I had managed to pick up while crawling around in dark airport underbellies and filthy airplane wheel wells, I hadn't been able to do anything about the impressive number of scuffs, scrapes, and cuts in the soft sheepskin. Hanging the jacket over the back of my chair so that I had both hands free to cast, I was soon watching all of the dirt that I had been unable to remove from its seams and fur collar drifting away in the light breeze blowing in through the open window. While the spell had managed to erase most of the worst signs of damage, I could still see the occasional lighter patch where there just hadn't been enough of the original material left for the spell to work with. Making a mental note to look into getting a professional to restore the still damaged leather once I had the time and money, I picked the jacket back up and gave it a quick shake to knock off any remaining dirt, before folding it up and shoving it back into the dresser and sliding the drawer closed with a thump. Picking my backpack up from the floor next to the dresser, I then slung it down on the bed next to the robes I had laid out and began to unpack it for the first time in months, spreading its contents out over the remaining surface of my blanket. Finding the filter mask that I hadn't worn since my first day here in Kamartaj, I set it down on top of the robes, along with a spare set of filters, storing the rest in the top drawer of my dresser. I then set my beat-up metal thermos down next to the mask, along with the final water cleaner tab that I had bought at the same time, before pulling out the filter straw to discover that I must have broken it at some point during my trip here. Both filter straw and thermos were soon as good as new after a quick repair spell, allowing me to turn my attention back to the remaining contents of my backpack. Pulling out a few pairs of thick wool socks, which I set down next to my filter mask, I then came across a couple of empty protein bar wrappers that I had tucked back into the bag during the long flight from Munich to New Delhi. That reminds me, I'd better grab some snacks from the kitchen before I head out, I realized. Especially if I'm going to be spending goddess knows how many hours wandering around in the dark inside of a mountain. Come to think of it, I wonder if any of the things the servants left for me to repair might be useful while I'm there. Tossing the empty wrappers in the wastebasket, I stepped around to the foot of the bed so that I could sort through the collection of broken objects, raising a speculative brow at the digital camera that would have to be returned to the fellow apprentice that had spent most of our first lesson with the sling ring, wishing that they were at the beach instead. Finding a large lump of fire engine red and shining metal down at the bottom of the pile, I began carefully setting everything else off to the side on the nearby floor, slowly unearthing what I soon recognized as a very old, and very broken flashlight. The whole thing looked like a lunchbox had mated with a desk lamp, with a slightly curved metal handle attached to the top of a squat red battery casing, with the broad dome of a reflector hanging off one end, while a bright red beacon poked out on the other end. The faded label on the side of the battery casing read, "Big Beam," in big cursive letters, with number 164 written below, and the whole thing looked like it might be nearly as old as Steve Rogers himself. It was obvious why it had been included among all of the other broken objects once the repair spell connected, revealing that not only was most of the wiring inside of the flashlight broken and/or corroded, the battery itself was extremely dead as well. The more obvious cracked glass lens and broken filament in the front lamp were actually the least of its issues, though the beacon light on the back was in remarkably good condition considering the state that the rest of the flashlight had ended up in. Deciding to start off with the most pressing issue, I focused on the broken and corroded wiring, looking back into their individual histories until I found the last time that someone had replaced them around a decade ago. Years of damage reversed themselves within my mind's eye as the mass of copper oxide reverted back into twisted lengths of wire, their thermoplastic coverings resealing themselves where they had cracked and split. Switching my focus over to the front lamp, I was relieved to discover that the bulb itself was still intact in spite of the rest of the damage the flashlight had received, and it only took a brief moment to restore the broken filament and mend the large crack in the lens. There were still a number of small cosmetic issues that didn't have any affect its overall function, but I decided to leave them alone as they just added a bit of character, leaving one last very important issue to take care of. Cutting off the flow of energy that I had been using to maintain the repair spell, I popped the latch on the back end of the flashlight's bright red battery case, revealing the large 6-volt battery resting inside. The battery itself was thankfully much newer than the wiring that I had just repaired, and I couldn't see any obvious signs of corrosion to indicate that it had begun to leak. This meant that the battery itself was in fairly decent condition, even if it no longer held any charge. Thankfully, I already knew the answer to that particular issue, as some of the homework I had recently completed from my book on electrical engineering had covered the chemistry and physics of alkaline batteries. As long as it hadn't started leaking any of the potassium hydroxide that was generated as a byproduct of the chemical reaction that generated the electricity in the first place, all of the original matter of what had once been a fully charged battery would still be contained within its stainless steel casing. While casting the repair spell on the discharged battery was rather straightforward, I did notice that it took a lot more energy to revert chemical changes than it did to move base matter around. I would have to keep that in mind when it came to repairing rusted metal, which I was sure to find plenty of soon enough. Once I was done casting, the battery looked as good as new, and after closing the flashlight up and giving its switch an experimental flick, I was pleased to find that everything was in working order. Now all that was left was grabbing some snacks, packing my bag, and finding the best time to slip away for a while so that I wouldn't be missed. Since most of the training that I had been doing recently outside of schoolwork had been spent on perfecting my use of the repair spell anyways, I figured that spending a few hours here or there fixing up what I hoped to be a thoroughly abandoned mountain retreat could actually be considered something like extra credit. If anything, I would definitely get a lot of practice repairing much larger things than the servants had been supplying me on a daily basis. Though, looking over the meager pile of supplies that I had prepared for myself, I had to wonder if I was really ready for this. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.